Hey, welcome back to Finite Commander, where we discuss high-powered Commander without infinite combos. In today's video, I'll be going over my Xenagos God of Revels combat-focused deck. It'll be a deck tech. Xenagos is a great commander if all you want to do is beat face. It's much more to the point than a couple of the other decks that I've gone over so far. But mostly your game plan is get Xenagos on the field as quickly as possible, play a creature that is big and has trample, and then start attacking your opponents to death. Xenagos himself is a 6/5 for 5, indestructible, but it's usually not a creature until your devotion gets over 7 or more. But the best part about him is that at the beginning of your combat step, you can give a target creature you control plus X, and haste, where X is its power. So when we're looking at creatures for this deck, we're looking for the lowest CMC possible with the highest power possible, and especially looking for trample because you don't want your giant attacker to get blocked by a mana dork or something of that nature. So anyway, let's dive into the creatures and see what we've got here. So first up is Atarka, World Render. Atarka is definitely on the higher side of the curve at 7. She is a 6/4 flying trample, and whenever a dragon you control attacks, it gains double strike. So Atarka attacking will first be made into a 12/10, and then gets double strike. So she's doing 24 damage in the air with trample. 7 mana is definitely on the high side, like I said, but 24 damage is also on the high side for the amount of damage you can pump out with just one creature and one attack. Balefire Dragon, also 7 mana, doesn't have trample, but does have flying, so it has that evasion. And when it deals combat damage to a player, it deals that much damage to each creature that player controls. So this is a great way of basically wrathing someone's board. They're gonna take 12 damage to all their creatures, which will probably kill everything they have that's not indestructible. This is just a great way to prevent counterattacks and weaken people that might be building up a board, but doesn't have trample again. So you have to kind of weigh attacking someone if they have a flying blocker against trying to clear that blocker out, so in the future you can wipe out their board. Usually, though, you just want to attack someone who can't block, and killing the rest of their creatures is just a bonus. Battle Mammoth is a brand new card out of Kaldheim. This one only costs 5, and I like creatures that cost 5 because it means if you can cast Xenagos, you can cast that creature. So you don't have to worry about stalling out and having Xenagos on the battlefield, but not having anything else to play. And Xenagos, we can get him down as early as like turn 2 with a mana crypt. Turn 3, turn 4 is definitely also doable. But even if you're the slowest, playing him on turn 5 and then attacking on turn 6, you definitely don't want to stall it even harder. So 5 is a good CMC for creatures in this deck. Battle Mammoth has trample, which is what we're always looking for. And whenever a permanent you control is the target of a spell or ability, your opponent's control, you can draw a card. So it doesn't have hexproof, so they can still remove it, but if they do, then it replaces itself, so that's always nice. And it has foretell, so on turn 3 or 4 you can foretell it. On turn 5 you can play Xenagos, and then on turn 6 you can play it for the foretell cost and have a little mana left over. That's a nice little bonus, but really we're just trying it out for that replacement effect. Blightsteel Colossus. So you can definitely cast this for its mana cost, but we do have a couple ways to cheat creatures into play, and that's the main way we're looking to get Blightsteel Colossus in play. But if you can get it into play, attacking him with Xenagos and Blightsteel Colossus is a 22 indestructible infect trample, which will probably one-shot pretty much anybody. And if it gets destroyed or milled or whatever, it gets shuffled back in your library to show up again. But this is one of our one-shot options, and no matter how much life they've gained or any other defenses they've put up, if they get 10 poison counters, they're dead. So Blightsteel Colossus is a nice silver bullet for the late game if the game has gotten out of control and you can't really kill the player any other way. Carnage Tyrant. So this is probably the prototypical good Xenagos creature. 7/6 for 6, can't be countered, trample, and hexproof. So there's pretty much no way to prevent this from hitting the board. I mean, they could like return it to your hand with a Venser or something, but that's pretty rare. And even if they do, you can just do it again next turn. And then when it's on the board, it has hexproof, so they can't single target remove it. So it only dies to Wraths or Cyclonic Rift or things of that nature. So you're pretty guaranteed to get this damage through, and it's attacking for 14 with Xenagos, so that's pretty nice. Just a nice standard creature. It doesn't have any card draw or anything, but definitely puts the damage in. Elder Gargaroth, cost 5, which is nice. Vigilance, Reach, and Trample, so it can attack and block when you're attacking to have that defense. And whenever it attacks, you get to choose one. You make a 3/3 beast token, you gain 3 life, or you draw a card. Almost always we're going to be drawing cards because drawing cards is the best. But you can make those 3/3 beast tokens as well to put on additional pressure, or if your life is getting extremely low, you can utilize that life gain as well. But usually drawing cards and attacking for 12 with trample is very nice in Xenagos. Emrakul, the Promised End. So this is the top of our mana curve, but not really. Blightsteel Colossus is the true top because Emrakul will almost always cost less than 13 unless you got Rest in Peace in play or something. So it costs one less for every card type in your graveyard. So land, creature, enchantment, artifact, etc. And even things like tribal and stuff, but we don't play tribal in this deck. So you can get it down to like, 8, 9 is a more reasonable CMC. And what you get for that mana is, first of all, when you cast it, you get to take control of somebody's turn, and then they get an extra turn after that turn. But usually, when you take control of someone's turn, you can really hurt them both by attacking out with their board, using their removal spells on their own creatures or on other people's creatures that you are more worried about. If they have like a Necropotence in play, you can just pay 40 life and kill them. Or if they have like an Ad Nauseam in their hand, you can cast it and keep paying life until they die. So plenty of ways to kill people just with that trigger. But then also Emrakul is a flying trample protection from instants, and it's a 13/13. So it's attacking for 26 with trample and flying, and protection from instants. So it's not going to eat a Swords to Plowshares or something like that. It does die to Wraths. It does die to Sorceries, but pretty resilient. And that cast trigger is super nice. And like I said when I talked about Blightsteel, we do have ways of cheating creatures into play. So you won't get the cast trigger if you cheat into play, but it's a nice trick to have up your sleeve for when the game's getting out of hand. Atali, Primal Storm. So Atali does not have trample, and it does not have card draw, but it does have pseudo card draw, where when it attacks, you exile the top card of every player's library, and then you can cast those cards without paying their mana costs. This gets around cast time restrictions, so like if they have a sorcery or a creature or an artifact. You can cast those when you attack with them. Sometimes you get all lands, and that's, too bad. But when you're exiling the top card of everyone's library, you're bound to hit something decent. And sometimes you get four, great things. So I really like tallying this deck. Not having trample is a little rough, but just getting that value off of him is very nice. And really enjoyed him uh, with Xenagos. It gives everything haste, not everything, but whatever you target haste. So being able to get that attack trigger right away definitely makes that value pay off. Giant Adaphage. So 7/7 for 7 with trample. Whatever deals combat damage to a player, you create a token that's a copy of Giant Adaphage. So if people don't have removal, you will very quickly stack up Giant Adaphage tokens and overwhelm everyone. Even if they get rid of the main one, the tokens have the same ability too. So, the first time you attack, you get one token. The second time attack, you get two tokens, and then four, and then eight, et cetera, et cetera. So very quickly can stack up the damage. 7/7 for 7 with no card advantage or anything staple to it is a little, questionable, but just for the pure power alone, you can really, really stack up the tokens and the damage. So I do like it. And I have considered cutting it quite a few times, but it always seems to make the cut. And I'm not changing that today either. Hellkite Tyrant, 6 power for 6, flying and trample. And when it deals combat damage to a player, you gain all artifacts they control. And then if you somehow get 20 artifacts, you will win the game in your upkeep. So this is just great for stealing people's mana rocks, for, stealing any artifacts they have. It takes artifact creatures. It has trample and flying, so evasion and trample. And then just stealing all their mana rocks is just the icing on the cake. I really like this card. It can really help you cast your bigger things like Blightsteel Colossus and Emrakul. And it deprives the mana rocks from your opponents. And even if they kill Hellkite Tyrant, once you gain control of those artifacts, you have them forever. So, uh, really enjoy this card. People always play artifacts, almost always, so there's always something to steal. Ilharg the Razeboar. So 6 power for 5, has trample, and when it attacks, you can put a creature card from your hand into play, tapped and attacking. It does go back to your hand after at the beginning of your end step, but this is an easy way to get a Bloodsteel Colossus in play and probably kill somebody, or an Emrakul, or any of your creatures. And if they have like an end of the battlefield ability, like uh, I don't know. If they have an end of battlefield ability, you'll get that. You won't get an attack trigger. So, like if you bring in a Tarka, you won't get the double strike trigger because it's put into play tapped and attacking. So you don't get the trigger when it attacks. But still, just being able to sheet that Blightsteel Colossus in play or any other creature into play and then put it back in your hand and do it again next turn, very worthwhile. And if it gets destroyed or is exiled, you can put it back on or back into your library, third from the top, to draw into later and cast again. So it's hard to deal with. They'd have to like tuck it to the bottom of your library to get rid of it forever, or at least for a while. So it's nice just to keep coming back turn after turn, uh, unless they counter it. Countering is the easiest way to get rid of Ilharg. Um, but I really like the value and really like him in this deck. Colonian Hydra. So when it comes into play, it only has 4 counters on it, but every time it attacks, you double the number of counters on it. So the first time it attacks, it'll be a 4/4. Xenagos will make it a 8/8, and then you put 4 more counters on it, making it a 12/12. But then the second time you attack, it goes from 8 counters to 16 counters, and he doubles it when it's an 8/8, so that's 24 damage, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger from there. So if it's not answered, it will quickly become a one-shot machine, and it has that trample, which is always key. So it starts off a little smaller than the rest of our creatures, but it quickly grows to being extremely dangerous and a must-answer threat, or else it will just start taking people out of the game. Malignus. So Malignus is another answer for people who like to gain a lot of life. Um, Damage that he deals cannot be prevented, and his power and toughness are equal to half the highest life total among your opponents rounded up. So when you attack with him, he has half power equal to the highest life total, and then Xenagos doubles that to equal their life total. So if they don't have blockers, they're dead. Um, it doesn't have trample, but we do run a couple things that give creatures trample in this deck. But if they don't have blockers, then you can just easily just kill them. So very worthwhile. Again, sometimes people just their life gain is out of control and you need ways to kill them even if they've gained, hundreds of life. So he definitely fills his purpose uh, in those scenarios. Morog, Fury of Akum, 6 for 6 mana, 6 power for 6 mana, but when it attacks, he gets 1/0. So you go to combat, you make him a 12/12, and then he'll become a 13/12. But the main reason we play him is that landfall ability. So you really want to uh, play your land in your second main phase when you have this creature in play. Because what will happen is you play him in your first main, you attack for 13, then you play a fetch land in your second main phase, and you fetch and you get another land. You'll get 2 landfall triggers, both giving you a second combat phase during this second main phase. And you untap your creatures at the beginning of those combat phases. So he's a 13 12. Then he'll become a 26. He'll have 26 power, and then adds another +1 because he's attacked again. And then you double that again to 53 or 54, easily one-shotting people. So, and then if you somehow can get more landfall triggers, you can get even more combat steps. But again, you really want to play those lands in your second main phase because if you play it in your first main phase, um, you'll attack and then untap and then attack and in your combat step. Um, so it's better to do it in your second main phase so that you get those extra untapped triggers. But either way, you're gonna be able to pump out the damage with this guy in play. And if you have more creatures in play, it's even better. Naiath of the Dire Hunt. So this is not a big beat stick. This is a kind of a card draw, kind of a dissuade attack blockers. But also, so what happens is whenever one or more creatures you control fight or become blocked, you draw a card. So it's a nice card draw. But at the beginning of your combat in your turn, you can pay a total of 3 mana, and if you do, you double target creature's power until end of turn. So just like Xenagos, it doesn't double toughness, but it does double the power. So these two together will quadruple the power, which just makes any creature in play extremely strong, and it forces that creature to be blocked. So you could just crash through their entire board and draw a card. So pretty nice. It is sometimes difficult, to play a big creature and then have mana left over to activate Naiath. But you don't always have to be in that position. You can, play your big creature and then play Naiath and activate her ability, or play Naiath early game and she can just hang out. and then you play your big creature and attack, and then your next turn you play your big creature with all your mana open, and then you can activate her and really lay the smackdown on somebody. So she's nice for that doubling and for the just consequential card draw when people block your creatures. So serves multiple purposes and a very nice support piece. Oran Frostfang. So this is another support piece. I mean, if it attacks with Xenagos, it's only dealing 4 damage, but it gives your creature's death touch, your attacking creature's death touch, and whenever a creature you control deals damage to a player, you draw a card. So a lot of our creatures have trample, and the way the trample rules work with death touch is you only need to deal 1 point of damage to whatever's blocking your attacker, and then everything else will trample over because the rules say basically that when you assign trample damage, you have to assign enough to destroy the creature, and then the rest tramples over. Well, if it has Death Touch, it destroys it with just 1 point of damage. So no matter how many creatures they have, you can just do 1 damage to all of them, destroy them with Death Touch, and then trample over for the rest. So a very nice dual-purpose card, gets that damage through, and draws you cards. 5 mana is a little bit on the high side for drawing cards, but again, it's just nice to have. And if people don't have blockers, you can attack them and get that 4 damage in or whatever. But he's really there to pump up your other creatures to really get them through. Pathbreaker Ibex. So only a 3/3 for 6, but when it attacks, all your creatures gain trample. So this is a trample enabler. And it gives all creatures +X until end of turn, where X is the biggest power among creatures you control. So you really want this paired with another big creature and attack, target the big creature with Xenagos, making it, like a 12/12 or whatever it is. And then Pathbreaker Ibex's attacking trigger will go on the stack. And then you give all your creatures +12/+12, including the creature, the big creature. So it's a 24/24. Pathbreaker Ibex is a 15/15, and any other creatures you have also get +12/+12 in this example, and they all have trample. So very nice. By himself, if this is the only creature you have in play, not ideal because it'll attack. Well, you'll go to combat. Xenagos will target it, make it a 6/6, and then it'll attack as a 12/12. So that's decent. Definitely not on the high side for just a single attacker in our deck. But it's acceptable, and it gives itself trample. So even by itself, it's a decent attacker. Quartzwood Crasher. So a 6/6 for 5. It has trample. And whenever one or more of your creatures deal trample, deal combat damage to a player, you create an XX token with trample, and where X is the amount of damage those creatures with trample did. So this is similar to Giant Adaphage, where it's just going to create more and more tokens that deal more and more damage because the tokens that it creates also have trample, and it has trample, and many of your other creatures have trample. So you're going to be creating huge XX green dinosaur beast tokens, and every time they deal damage, you're going to get an even bigger one, and it just snowballs. And it's only 5, versus the giant Adaphage, which is 7. So it gets started a lot faster. Um, so it's been pretty nice. It is susceptible to a wrath, but this is a creature deck, an attacking creature deck, so it's just an Achilles heel of any attacking creature deck. But it can snowball out of control real quick and run away with the game if it's not answered. Questing Beast. So this is in standard right now, and everyone loves Questing Beast. It's only a 4/4 for 4. It does not have trample. It does have vigilance and death touch, so that's nice. So if you have a way of giving it trample, you can easily push that damage through. But it can't be blocked by small creatures, anything with power 2 or less. And It has the static ability of combat damage you would deal, or creatures you control would deal, can't be prevented. So, people can't play fogs. People can't activate, their creatures that prevent combat damage. There's no way for them to prevent combat damage when Questing Beast is in play. So he's the main reason he's in the deck because I can't remember that legendary creature's name. But there's a legendary creature that just taps to prevent combat damage that one person plays in my meta. So this is like a an answer to that. But just in general, Fog is not widely played, but like in my Muldrotha deck, I play Spore Frog, which is a fog on a body. And, there's other ways to prevent combat damage. Uh, so Questing Beast gets around all those ways. So it's nice. And it attacks for 8, by himself with Xenagos, which is definitely on the low end. But he has all those other, nice things. So a nice support creature for the deck. Rurik Thar, the Unbowed. Vigilance and Reach for 6 power for 6. No trample, which is a shame. And he attacks each combat if able, which we're always attacking anyway, so that's not a problem. But whenever any player, including you, plays a non-creature spell, Rurik Thar deals 6 damage to him. And that damage stacks up really, really quick. So even if someone responds and targets him with a removal spell, he'll smack him in the face for 6. But if they don't, every non-creature spell they play from there then on, just 6 damage over and over again, very quickly can stop people from playing their non-creature spells, which stops them from playing counter spells and stops them from playing their Rhystic Study, and anything else, anything that's not a creature. This does affect you, but we can play around it, or we're not worried. We'll take that 6 damage to cast a non-creature spell if we need to, because usually we're the ones threatening people's life totals, so they're much more worried than we are. So really like Rurikthar in this deck, and he's served me well. Scourge of the Throne. So no trample, but does have flying. Only 5 power, but it has dethrone. So as long as you're not on the throne, as long as you don't have the highest life total, when this attacks, it'll get +1/+1/+1 counter, and then you get a extra combat step. So it'll attack as a 6/6, turn into a 12/12, and then even if you're on the throne after that, if it doesn't get a second dethrone trigger, it will attack from a 12/12 to a 24/24. So that's 36 damage in one turn off of Scourge. Now, unfortunately, like I just said when I was talking about Rurik Thar, a lot of the times you do have the highest life total. So you do have to consider that, but not always, and especially not if this is like the first creature you're playing that game and attacking with. And, hitting someone from 40 to 4 um, on that first combat or that first turn of combat is very, very impactful. Um, so he's definitely good in this deck. Selvala, Heart of the Wilds. So Selvala is a kind of a card draw engine because almost always you're going to be playing the biggest creatures, and her ability is whenever another creature enters the battlefield, if its power is greater than each other creature, then they draw a card. So this could give your opponents card draw, which is obviously not good. But she has another ability. For a green and tapper, you can add X mana to your mana pool in any combination of colors, where X is the greatest power of creatures you control. So you attack with your, whatever, let's say you have a 12/12 in play. So you pay 1, and then you make, a total of 11 mana, discounting the 1 that you paid. And then you cast basically whatever you want in your deck. So she really pumps out the mana, and she can give you some card draw. So definitely nice support creature in this deck. Just be aware of that. Potentially you could be giving your opponents cards, which is not great. But ramping for 12 is great, so we'll take her. Siege Behemoth. This is similar to the Carnage Tyrant. It can be countered, but it does have hexproof, and hexproof is very nice to have in this deck because you don't want to be having your creatures die to single target removal. But it's kind of like a Thorn Elemental, if you remember that card, where when it's attacking, you can assign your damage as though the creature wasn't blocked. So even if they block it with a million toughness, you can just say, that's nice, but I'm still gonna deal 14 damage to you if Siege Behemoth is the only thing attacking. Uh, but if you're attacking with a Blightsteel Colossus, that's a definite kill. If you're attacking with a Malignus, that's a definite kill. So it can really punch through that damage, and it's like a pseudo trample, but sometimes even better because trample does have to trample over things, where Siege Behemoth can just ignore the blockers entirely. It only has that 4 toughness. I mean, it'll get a 7 additional toughness with Xenagos, but it's a little fragile, so you got to watch that. But very nice to push that damage through. Somberwald Sage. This is just a mana dork that adds 3 to cast your creatures. It costs 3 to add 3. I think it's worth it. We don't play the little mana dorks. We want the big mana dorks in this deck. Soul of the Harvest. So a 6/6 for 6 with trample, but whenever another non-token creature comes into play, it draws you cards. It's just a nice beat stick that also draws you cards. Nice to have. Thunderfoot Baloth, 5/5 for 6 with trample. But if you have Xenagos in play, which you almost always do, it gets +2/+2, and all your other creatures get +2/+2, and also have trample. So a nice trample enabler, and it makes itself a 7/7, which is definitely worth it in this deck. Toski, Bearer of Secrets. So this is very similar to the Oran Viper. It doesn't give your creatures Death Touch, but it's 1 mana less. It's indestructible. It can't be countered, and it gives you that card draw. So card draw is always important, and this is another way to enable it a little cheaper, but you don't get that Death Touch. But it's just kind of like Oran Viper number 2. Ulvenwald Tracker. So this is only 1 mana, and for 2 and tapping it, you can have one of your creatures fight another target creature. So this is your single target removal. Get rid of those blockers before you attack, or after you attack and you attack, kill them with your pumped up creature. You'll basically be able to kill anything that says I'm indestructible. So this is a very nice utility creature to have, and very on theme for this deck. Verdurous Gearhulk, a 4/4 for 5. When it comes into play, you can put 4 +1/+1 counters on it. So it's really, an 8/8 for 5. Or you can put those 4 +1/+1 counters on another creature if you have something better that would use it better, like a Tarka or something. So just a nice versatile creature. It's usually just an 8/8 for 5, which is nice rate compared to the other creatures in this deck. And then the last creature is Voracious Hydra. So similarly, it's just a beat stick, or it can be a removal piece. Usually, you want to pump it up with those +1/+1 counters. So like if you cast it for 5, it'll be a 6/6 for 5. But if you cast it for 6, it'll be a 8/8 for 6. And so on and so on, because you double X when it comes into play. But it can also act as removal if you need it. So nice versatility. And if you just have a bunch of mana, like if you have Sylvala, and you need something to pump mana into, this is definitely a candidate. So moving to sorceries. First up, Chandra's Ignition. So this can win you the game on the spot. When you cast it, target creature you control deals damage to each equal to its power to each other creature, including your creatures, and each opponent, so not including you. So if you cast this on a Blightsteel Colossus, you win the game. If you cast this on some giant creature that you've like had taken multiple combat steps with, you're probably going to win the game. But even if you cast it on a 12/12, you know, it'll kill. It'll be a wrath for all of the creatures in play, and do 12 damage to all your opponents. And that's like worst case scenario. The best case scenario is you're just winning on the spot when you cast this. So very, very useful in this deck. It gives you that reach if you've gotten to some weird board position where you can't attack for some reason. This can reset the board and get you back into the swing of things. Cultivate. It's just ramp. 3 mana ramp is nice because Xenagos costs 5. So if you cast this on turn 3, you'll be dropping Xenagos on turn 4, which is not the fastest, but it's still 1 turn early, so um, works well. Finale of Devastation. It's a creature tutor, and if you can pump 10 or more mana into it, all your creatures get plus 10, or plus whatever until end of turn, and haste. So, you can use this just a regular creature tutor, get something that costs 5, put 7 mana into it, or late game with Savala or, just a bunch of lands. You can pay 12 and really put the hurt on somebody in combination with Xenagos' trigger. Green Sun Zenith, just another creature tutor. Can only get green creatures, but we got a plenty of green creatures in here. And it shuffled itself back in, so it can reuse itself. And you can use it early game to get like a mana dork. So it's versatile, and you're only paying 1 extra to put the creature directly into play. So that's pretty nice. Kodama's Reach, just like Cultivate, just more ramp. Nature's Lore, ramp, and the forest comes into play untapped. Seize the Day is extra combats. Only for 1 creature, but I've won the game several times by casting Seize the Day and then flashing it back. So, towards the end of the game, when people's life totals are getting low, you can attack with your creature and severely wound or kill 1 player, then cast Seize the Day, untap it, double its power again, and probably kill another player, and then flash it back, double its power again, and definitely kill the 3rd player. So this is very versatile. And if you don't have the mana, you can spread out those extra attacks amongst multiple turns. But in an ideal world, you will have the 7 mana to do it twice to get the 3 triggers off of Xenagos and really crush someone's hopes and dreams. Selvala Stampede. So this is a way to cheat creatures into play. It has that Council's Dilemma mechanic where starting with you, each player votes wild or free, and then you reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card for each wild vote and put those creatures into play, and then you put a permanent card into play for each free vote. Um, so you have to kind of be careful because, like, if you're hellbent or you only got 1 card in your hand, everyone will just vote for free. So hopefully you have at least a few cards in your hand, and if you have something that you definitely want to play, vote for free. But if you don't, I would vote for wild and just hope that your deck gives you something good. Almost all the creatures in this deck are great to hit off of Selvala Stampede. And you can kind of mind game your opponents. Like if you have a bunch of good stuff in your hand, you can vote for free too. And then if they all vote for wild, then you can drop all those, permanents as well. So either way, you're winning. Even if you only get 1 free creatures off of this, I think it's worth it. But you're probably going to get multiple free things off of it. So it's very synergistic with the deck, and I have considered cutting it a couple of times because It's kind of a chaos deck, chaos card, and you don't really know what you're going to get other than whatever you vote for. But the value is just too good for 6 mana. So it's staying in for now. Sky Shroud Claim is just another ramp card. It does cost 4, which is not ideal. But hopefully, like you ramped on turn 2, or you can play with a Soul Ring or something. This could probably be like a 3 mana ramp card to be more efficient. But you don't always have to be the most efficient in non-infinite commander. And ramping on 4 and then getting those 2 forests untapped is pretty nice. Through visits, another ramp card. The forest comes play untapped. And then Tooth and Nail. So Tooth and Nail, you cast it for 7 and put 2 free creatures into play from your hand, or cast it for 9 and tutor up any 2 creatures you need, and then put those into play for free. So it's another way to cheat things into play, just like we already talked about. Very nice. I mean, 9 mana is obviously a lot of mana, but we can produce it if we need to late game and really surprise people with Blightsteel Colossus or something like that. All right, instance Beast Within, just great removal. Deflecting Swat is great protection. You can protect Xenagos, you can protect your attacking creature, you can steal somebody's extra turn spell, you can turn counter spells against Deflecting Swat instead of whatever they were targeting in the first place. Or if the stack is getting out of hand, you can turn the counter spell on something else. Just a great card, and we're almost always having Xenagos in play, so it's almost always free. Heroic Intervention just gives all your permanents indestructible and hexproof, so very nice against wraths or single target removal. Just a nice protection piece. Noxious Revival, just a way to get a card from your graveyard back on top of your library. So if you're drawing a card, you can cast this first, potentially for free if you just want to pay 2 life. Or if it's right before your turn, your opponent's end step, you can play it to get you to card draw it. It's nice to get back your big creatures, or to get back Deflecting Swat, or Pyroblast, or whatever you need. Speaking of Pyroblast, this is a counterspell, or a destroy target blue permanent. So you can destroy Rissik Seti, you can destroy Consecrated Sphinx, or you can counter their spells if they're trying to counter your stuff. So it's always nice to be able to play on the stack. So Pyroblast is very useful and very worth playing in this or any red deck that doesn't have blue in it. Ram through. So this will let you destroy a creature, and if you play it right after you pump up your creature with Xenagos, you can preemptively get rid of a blocker. And if that creature has trample, then that damage is going to trample over to that opponent's face. So, if you've got someone low, you can just trample over their mana dork with Ram Through and kill them, and then attack somebody else and do a bunch of damage to them too. So nice and versatile, and it's another removal card with kind of a pseudo fight mechanic. Red Elemental Blast, same thing as Pyroblast. Return of the Wild Speaker. This is a nice card draw option, but you can also use it to pump up your creatures. So for 5 mana at instant speed, you can draw cards equal to the power of the biggest non-human you have, which is basically everything you have, or give all your non-humans +3/+3. So I'm almost always drawing cards with this, but you can also um, pump up your creatures if that's more useful in a very unusual situation. Shared Summons is another tutor spell. This one at instant speed, so like at the end of your opponent's turn, you can pay 5, tutor up 2 good creatures, and then be ready to play them on your turn. Tibalt's Trickery, so brand new out of Kaldheim, just another counterspell with a pretty significant downside, but we're not playing blue, so we got to take what we can get. And you know, you just got to risk it. Sometimes you got to risk it for the biscuit. And countering their game-winning play or countering their Cyclonic Rift, that's gonna save them. You don't really care if they top deck a you know, I don't know, anything that doesn't have the same impact. So if it's not also a wrath, or it's not also a removal spell, then it doesn't really matter. So I haven't actually cast this yet, but it just seems so good to have this option. A counter spell in your Gruul deck is just too good to pass up. Veil of Summer. So this is a basically a cryptic command for 1 green, because usually you're using it to counter a spell and then draw a card. But you can also use it to protect your creatures from blue or black spells, and then draw a card. So very, very useful, very versatile, usually countering a counter spell and then replacing itself. So very, very useful in any green deck and definitely useful here. And then Worldly Tutor, just another creature tutor. Very good to have in this creature-based deck. Artifacts. So we got our Mana Rocks. We've got our Embercleave. So standard players love Embercleave, and so do we. This will give your creature trample and double strike, and +1/+1. But with Xenagos, it's really +2/+2 and trample and double strike. And you can flash it in to surprise your opponents and get that mana cost reduction. So the only equipment we play, but probably the best equipment that you could play in this deck, and double strike on a 12/12 creature, well really a 13/13 creature, uh, would be the bottom. So you're hitting for 26, and it's only gets better from there. Mana Crypt, Arcane Signet, Soul Ring, Mimic Vat. So Mimic Vat just gives you a nice way to constantly reuse your creatures. So you drop this early game, and then you start attacking, and one of your nice attackers dies, or one of your opponent's nice attackers dies. Imprinted on the Mimic Vat, and then every turn you pay 3 mana, and you attack with that token, and you pay 3 mana the next turn. You do it again, and you don't have to keep committing things to the board. You don't want to fall into a trap where you're like just playing every single creature you have, and then they all die to a wrath. So Mimic Vat, if you can make an Atarka every turn for 3 mana, that's wonderful. And you don't have to do anything. You just have to keep doing that over and over and over, and force your opponents to destroy Mimic Vat or do something else, because they will quickly die to your attacking creatures, your token creatures, without you having to commit anything else. And like I said, you can steal your opponent's creatures when they die too, which might give you some nice, utility options like an enter the battlefield ability, or who knows? You never know what you might be able to get. And then the Great Henge. It's a mana rock, but with all our huge creatures, it's probably only kind of got cost you 2, and then it taps for 2, gain 2 life, and whenever you have a non-token creature enter the battlefield under your control, it gets a 1/1 counter, and you draw a card. So it's a card draw, it's mana ramp, it's life gain, and it's almost always only going to cost you 2 mana. So what could be better than that? Enchantments. So we got aggravated assault. This is your uh, other extra combat option. It costs 5, but that's not too bad. And again, you can play this early game and then set it up for late game. It can catch just a random enchantment removal if you just play it out there. So it might be worth waiting until you have 8 mana, and then attacking with a creature, or casting it, attacking with a creature, and then activating it. So you at least get 1 activation out of it. But enchantments are fairly resilient, so it's not the most dangerous play to just play it out there. Um, and if you have the next card, then it's even. Or I'm sorry, no, this only protects your creatures. But asceticism. So asceticism gives all of your creatures hexproof. And for 2 mana, you can regenerate target creature. So this is very nice. People will be trying to destroy your creatures with wraths or with single target removal. So if all your stuff has hexproof, the single target removal option is out. And unless they're playing, OG Wrath of God or Damnation, most wraths actually let creatures regenerate. This also is nice if you're facing down Death Touch creatures, so you can still attack and then just regenerate them. So very nice protection piece, and always happy to see this if you draw it. Carpet of Flowers, just a great mana ripping option in all but the games where people don't play islands. Defense of the Heart, another way to cheat creatures into play. And you could also, if you cast this, people might stop playing creatures, so it dissuades them from continually building up their board. But usually, I'd prefer casting this when someone already has three creatures in play, so you're almost guaranteed to get the trigger. And when it triggers, you get to search your library for 2 creature cards and put them directly into play. So just a great way to cheat creatures into play, and usually you can get that trigger no problem in a game of Commander. Greater Good. This is a sacrifice outlet, and when you sacrifice the creature, you draw cards equal to its power, then you discard 3 cards. So our creatures are almost always huge, and drawing those extra cards in response to a single target removal or something is just a really nice option to have. Or if you're getting really low on cards, then you can um, sacrifice your creature and then get refill your hand. So very nice card. I really like this deck. And then just good old Sylvan Library. If you're feeling brave, you can pay that extra 4 life to draw extra cards, which can be worth it. Don't be afraid to do that. But just kind of setting the top of your deck, and then with a fetch land, you can always shuffle those cards away if you don't like what you're seeing. And then the lands. I'll just talk about a couple of them. Castle Garenbrig can ramp you a little bit, turn 5 mana into 6 mana, so that's nice. Kessig Wolfrun, this is a way to give your creatures trample and plus X power. So if you have a bunch of mana and nothing to do with it, you can just pump a ton of mana into this and really push a creature over the edge. But for just 3 mana, 2 and then tapping itself, so you're giving up that 1 mana, you can give your creature trample. So that's always nice to have. Then we got Rogue's Passage for effectively 5 mana because you're tapping itself. Give a creature unblockable, always nice. Skarg the Rage Pits, very similar to Kessig Wolfrun. You can't dump a ton of mana into it, but 1/1 and trample for effectively 3 mana. Nice to have. And then we got Strip Mine to get rid of, like Mazavith or, annoying lands like that. So, and then the rest of them are just dual lands and basics and whatnot. So that's the deck. I hope you liked it. I hope it gave you some good ideas for your Xenagos deck or other combat-focused rule decks. If you liked the video, please consider subscribing. This is a brand new channel and hoping to build it up over time. But either way, I'll see you next time.